Welcome back to the Titanium Hanger. This is Mike, and I'm coming at you with Volume 2 of Unreleased Masterpiece Third-Party Transformer Figures. And the first one was very well received. I had a lot of viewer submissions of other figures that never got released, and a lot of it is they wanted them to get released, and they have excitement for it. So we're going to get right into it, but before that, I want to talk about Acoustic Wave. Now, for some of you guys noticed that I put the video out on, I think, a Thursday or a Friday when I put that first video up, and Acoustic Wave was announced the day after. Now, I had no prior knowledge that that was going to happen, but I do want to point out that they completely redesigned that figure. So the ones I talked about are actually old molds, old designs, and I'm glad they did redesign it, because the new one looks so amazing. First thing I want to talk about is the G1 Unicron that got canceled, that never got made, and it's not Masterpiece. But when it comes to Unicron, there's never gonna be a Masterpiece Unicron. There's never gonna be a scale planet that's your whole house or your whole block. It's just not going to happen. Now, there may be someone that does something crazy and does a paint scheme that looks like a Unicron on a block. Who knows? But they're never going to make a production model of Unicron that is Masterpiece to scale. It's just not ever going to happen. So, with that, any Unicron that's made is amazing, in my opinion. It's something to look at, something to think about. But when you look at this one here, this was made in 1986. Now, your first impression is, God, that looks bad. That looks horrible. But when you look at it from the respect and the aspect that this thing was made 30 years ago, 33 years ago, right? Yeah, 33 years ago. It's actually kind of impressive that they considered making that. They scratched it, but maybe it would have been brought to light if we had crowdfunding back then. But I don't think back then crowdfunding was happening. So it is an interesting idea, interesting concept, and I really like talking about it during this time right now that we're funding HasLab Unicron. Because in the future, we're going to look back. And you watch this 6 months from now, you're going to go, oh yeah, that's when we funded the HasLab Unicron. And I was so shocked that it actually had 10,000 backers in the last few days. But here's the planet mode, and the arms are used as the rings, which of course shows the limit of technology, I guess, back then, or ingenuity, or just where we were with these kinds of things back in 1986. And it's very G1-esque, because that's how they would have done things in G1. I also think it's just really cool that it was designed and considered to be made, and things like this are a whole lot of fun to watch. Cybertron.com has a gallery of like 85 different pictures, so go to that site and check out all their wonderful pictures. Next thing I want to talk about is something I can't find hardly any information about, and it was actually viewers submitted just to tell me that it existed, was a Black Mamba Motormaster. And now this thing was supposed to go with your Combiner Wars, but when you're looking at third party and you're looking at Masterpiece type figures, that's one of the things that companies do to get their foot in the door or to get into making Masterpiece figures is dealing with a chug style. But we know how bad the Motormaster was in the Combiner Wars line, and Boldform made their own, but people said it wasn't that great. And I think the fact that the Boldform one did not do very well is why Black Mamba didn't go forward with this. Next up, I want to talk about Make Toys for a minute. They've made the best headmasters out there, and I gotta tell you, I'm waiting on their Brainstorm, and I'm waiting on their Highbrow, and I really look forward to seeing those figures get released. And a lot of people feel like they've canceled that they're not going to go forward with that. I still feel like they will, but there's rumors that they were going to make the Horrorcons. Now, there's not even prototype pictures of the Horrorcons that they're going to make, and I don't know if they've decided to cancel all that, but I could tell you right now, I would rather stick with what KFC's got going on in the Horrorcons and just get out the first set of 4 Autobot headmasters. Well, what do you think about that? Next up on the list, we've got the MMC Defensor. And I would have really liked to see this thing, because I don't think we've got anybody putting out a Defensor that fits in the new modern scale and size. And maybe this thing was only going to be in the old 16-inch size. I don't have that much information on it. But the truth is that they're working on their Bruticus. And when we find out, you know, how big the Bruticus is, I bet you this thing would have matched the Bruticus. But why are we going forward with a Bruticus when we really need this more? We have shots of their hot shot, and it looks good. It looks like they would have done a pretty good job with this figure. I think this figure would have been a great Defensor, and we need that. But for whatever reason, they put it on the back burner. They scrapped it, and we may never see it. We may have to wait for Zeta to put one out. But I gotta say, we talk about these things, we create the buzz in the community. Maybe it'll motivate them to go back to that project. Next, I want to talk about Moz Toys. Now, I really don't know a whole lot about the company Moz Toys, and I know that the figures they've put out that they've sold and have sold out, actually, are Cybertronian versions, such as this Bumblebee, and I think that's the direction they were going. They were just going to stick with that. And so going into the Tetrajets, I think they would have fit really well with their line, and it should have kept going. And I think they would have sold very well. Now this is a sore subject for a lot of people, and they really wanted those Tetrajets. And I know that Moz Toys has gone under, and I know that with that they put out this little figure here called Stack, and that's the last thing that they've actually put out. And it's really not even a figure, it's just like a plastic mold with some paint on it. But I think that we're seeing the end of this company, and I really do hope they actually come through and get the first of their Tetrajets out, get funded, make enough money to continue going. But it looks like it's not going to happen. But I would love to see this somehow, some miracle, that it goes through, because the figures do look good. They look good, and they look good in both modes. It's something very interesting, and I'd love to see it happen, but as now it's on the canceled list. So I want to talk about a few figures from G Creation that seem to be canceled. They should have been coming soon. G Creation and their GDW line had a Fuma, which was their 6-shot, and then they had an Optimus Prime. They had released a Prowl, but the rest of these seem to not be there. And you're looking up there, it looks like we could have a Seeker in this, we could have had a Megatron in this, and so on. But it seems like this came to a screeching halt, and it's no longer. But they are releasing a recolor of their Dinobot Combiner. Maybe if they re-release this and sell enough of them, they're making up enough capital to go on into another one of those projects, which it seems really cool. Like, I'm Ultra G1, but I still think that the designs of those are really cool. And I'm also a fan of that Fuma figure. I understand that is probably the best 6-shot that's been made, but it's not the most G1, because that's not what they're going for here. So there was a Make Toys kickback that was rumored and was going to get made, but when I got to looking into this, because I've heard a lot about it, I got to looking at it, and it turns out that it's just the Calcitrant from MMC, and I'm starting to wonder if MMC and Make Toys are working together, because a lot of these third-party companies work together. But here we go, we have Calcitrant looks exactly, the MMC Calcitrant looks exactly like the Make Toys version that was rumored to come out. So starting to wonder what's going on with that situation. But then again, many of these companies do collaborate, so it wouldn't surprise me at all. So the last one I want to talk about is Transpose Cup. And I want to say that I don't think we'll ever see this version of Transpose Cup come out. And there's a few reasons why. The number one is I think Fans Toys nailed the aesthetic of Cup. Like, you can tell that that is Cup. And it looks really good. But when you look at the Transpose version versus the Fans Toys version, the Transpose does not, to me, it doesn't look as good. And there are a couple aspects of the Transpose that are more tune accurate, that give it a little bit more of a tune look. But it's still, I think it's still a far second to what Fans Toys has already done and had already put out years ago. So I think they know that. I think either this thing's getting redesigned and will come out later, or it's getting scrapped entirely, because none of these companies want to lose. None of them want to be second. And I really think there's a huge rivalry between Transpose and Fans Toys. Even though Fans Toys has come out and said that Zeta is their biggest competitor, I still think Transpose and Fans Toys compete on a whole different level. And I also hear if you can't get a hold of a Fans Toys version, you can always get the Toy World version. So anyway, what do you guys think about these unreleased figures? How many of these do you think may actually resurface down the road? And do you have any other submissions of unreleased third-party Masterpiece figures that have not been made? Like, subscribe, Titanium Finger out.